IDW has been knocking it out of the park with their Godzilla comics, and Cullen Bunn and Dave Walker's Godzilla Cataclysm kept up the good work. Post-apocalyptic stories have been kind of same old recently, but Bunn threw in a wicked twist. Huge monsters. Cataclysm kicks off 20 years after a kaiju apocalypse. These monsters have reached this legendary, almost holy level in the eyes of the people left in this apocalyptic world. In fact, Godzilla seems pretty set on keeping humans in their struggling state, with protector monsters like Biollante and Mothra gone for good. But of course, the comic features a legendary Godzilla villain in the last issue, someone Godzilla has never been able to destroy. So without any further ado, let's begin. We have such sights to show you. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. The gods never leave us. The comic begins in a world that has been sent to a primitive state because of Godzilla's wrath. The first few panels contain only a monologue, but the events in the background are what's more important. Clearly, Mount Fuji is kinda chilling in the backdrop, while the rest of Tokyo finds itself in the midst of some god-level destruction. Buildings have been desecrated, people are running for their lives, airplanes are scrambling. It's complete mayhem. One of the panels shows the likes of Godzilla, Ghidorah, Mothra, and Anguirus battling it out in what is called the Titan War. When monsters met monsters, they vented out their fury upon one another, and when they were done, they turned their baleful gaze toward mankind. When their war was finished, the monsters vanished back into the sea, the air, and the earth. But the world of man, the world that was, has been reduced to rubble and ash. In this dystopian and apocalyptic world, the elders remember the kaiju as the devil, reminding them of their sins, but the young started seeing them as gods, worshipping them. It had been 20 years since the last kaiju vanished, and the age of monsters had ended as abruptly as it had begun, but some like Hiroshi knew they would be back. Humanity was picking up the pieces of what was left, and one such people belonged to a small village in the ruins of Tokyo. At the break of day, Hiroshi's grandson, Arata, and his friend Shiori meet him. They were going into the ruins to find things that the villagers had asked them for. These things did not have to be valuable like gold and jewelry, but things that would add value to life, like a magazine for young women or toys for children. The young and healthy from the village would often come this way to scout for these things. The last time Hiroshi was here, the place was more dead than now. He was surprised to see some additional overgrowth, which was unusual. Along the way, they find the dead remains of a huge bear. There were few predators that could take down such a huge animal, so it was pretty curious to find. It's not before long that Calamity raised its ugly head again. One of the men who came with Arata and Shiori got swept away by something. They could not even get the time to see what took him. The men scrambled to find safety when they found out that a brood of Kamacuras was behind the attack. These were kaiju that resembled giant praying mantises and were known for their huge sickle-shaped claws that could cut through humans like hot knives and butter. A few incarnations of Kamacuras have depicted them to be the same height as Godzilla himself. Anyway, so Arata and Shiori hide under some debris for safety, but they are found by one of the insectoid kaiju. They would have been super dead had it not been for the plant overgrowth that violently dismembered them. How did that happen? Well, the plant growth was actually Biollante, another kaiju, often hailed as a protector. You know what kind of kaiju Biollante is? Well, as shocking as it may sound, it is the result of some good old DNA splicing done by one Dr. Genichiro Shirogami. To revive his daughter, he spliced her daughter Erika's DNA with a rose and Godzilla, so we have Biollante is equal parts human, rose, and Godzilla. Anyway, so Biollante started dismembering the Kamacuras, but the place became kaiju central when Godzilla arrived and blasted Biollante with his beam of blue radiation. Almost unable to believe what he was seeing, all Arata could think was that his grandfather Hiroshi was right about the eventual return of gods. Do gods listen to our prayers? You see, people do two things about the things they don't understand and control. They either fear them or they worship them, and sometimes they do both. The same happened with the monsters. Even those who were too young to remember the era of the kaiju offered their prayers as if they were paying homage to ancient gods. Some prayed to Mothra for good fortune, others called to Ghidorah to bring the rain, and still others believed Ibira would bring plentiful fishing trips. Even Hiroshi prayed. He did not believe that the monsters were gods. He knew better, but he prayed just the same. As Biollante and Godzilla fought each other, the They produced thunder, and the earth beneath them shook. These rumblings were heard back in the village, but they were still unaware that the monsters had returned. Biollante had ensnared Godzilla in its humongous vines, but the only way to tame Big G was by binding his mouth, something Biollante would learn the hard way. Godzilla unleashed his radioactive beam, which went through Biollante, creating a giant burning hole in him. Arata and Shiori, the only survivors of the scavenging party, tried to seek shelter. In the midst of chaos wrought by titans, Shiori and Arata were mortals in the shadow of giants, darted desperately for sanctuary. The earth trembled under the wrath of Godzilla, the Leviathan of the deep, as he unleashed his fury upon Biollante, igniting her verdant form with a searing blaze of atomic fire. Their dance of destruction painted the sky with flames and fear. Just as the scales of battle tipped in Godzilla's favor, Mothra, the winged deity of disguise, descended like a guardian angel. With a gust of her mighty wings, she cast Godzilla down, an act of defiance against the king of monsters. She tended to Biollante, her healing touch a desperate bid to mend the gaping wounds inflicted by Godzilla's wrath. But fate, it seemed, favored the fire breather. Godzilla rose indomitable and relentless, his atomic breath a scorching lance that tore through Biollante and scorched Mothra's celestial wings. In this cataclysm, Shiori paused to collect something in his bag. With a weight of their uncertain future, they ran towards the village. As the shadows of evening draped over the village, whispers of dread and uncertainty stirred among its inhabitants. It wasn't before long that Arata and Shiori returned, bearing news most dire. The ancient behemoths had awakened once more. They first go to Hiroshi and tell him whatever they've seen. Hiroshi asks them to tell him every detail before the council could hear of it. He tells them that these colossal creatures were not deities to be revered or feared, but mere beasts of nature, untamed and unpredictable. Shiori, in a tone filled with sorrow, spoke of Biollante. He tells Hiroshi that Biollante was growing and could have made the earth green again, but the hope was crushed by Godzilla's fiery rage. It seemed as if Godzilla harbored a disdain for the flourishing of life, all life at that. As night deepened, the village, now aware of Godzilla's return, was gripped by a wave of panic. Hiroshi found himself pleading to Godzilla for forgiveness for past transgressions, a prayer for peace amidst fear. He begs Godzilla to forgive the humans and forget the past atrocities they have done to him. But what is Hiroshi talking about? Later that night, Shiori retrieves a rose of Biollante from his bag, which seems like a silent symbol of hope that would also entwine the fates with these mythic monsters and the humans who live at their mercy. Are they really gods? The day following the resurgence of the kaiju, the villagers convened. Amidst the fear and uncertainty, a group of men suggested reviving the practice of sacrifices to appease these gods. However, Arata and Shiori intervened, asserting that the return of the monsters was due to Biollante's growth, which had attracted them for various reasons. Despite attempts to persist with the ideas of sacrifices, Hiroshi countered, stating with conviction that the monsters required nothing from humans. When questioned about his certainty, Hiroshi recounted his understanding of the kaiju's motives, particularly Godzilla's. He believed Godzilla had annihilated Biollante to prevent the world's rejuvenation and consequently protect himself from future human harm. With Biollante's destruction, Hiroshi reasoned the threat of Godzilla's return was diminished. As the discussion concluded, Hiroshi's gaze fell upon Shiori, who appeared uneasy, like he was hiding something, which was in fact the truth. Sensing something amiss, Hiroshi followed the pair home. There they discovered that the Biollante flower Shiori had secreted away had transformed into a rose bush, now filling the room. Upon discovering the overgrown Biollante, Hiroshi quickly excised its core and instructed Arata and Shiori to remove it from the village as a measure of protection of both Biollante and the villagers. Their efforts, however, were too late, too little, because Megaguirus, accompanied by a swarm of Meganula, made a sudden appearance. The monsters began abducting villagers and consuming Biollante's vines. Megaguirus has a unique hybrid appearance, which blends the characteristics of Godzilla and a Meganula. She features a predominantly reptilian head devoid of antennae and has a mouth filled with sharp teeth, in contrast to the typical mandibles of her Meganula counterparts. Defined by her aggressive and dominant nature, Megaguirus is singularly focused on defeating Godzilla and absorbing his energy. She usually uses her remarkable speed and agility to maneuver around Godzilla, using these attributes to confuse and overpower him in battle. Anyway, in the ensuing chaos, Hiroshi, Arata, and Shiori fled from the village. Amidst their escape, Mothra entered the fray, engaging in combat with Megaguirus. Godzilla soon followed, escalating the conflict. During this turmoil, Arata suggested destroying Biollante to deter Godzilla. However, Hiroshi, aligning with Shiori, opted to preserve Biollante, believing in its potential to rejuvenate the world. When there's God, there's devil. Years ago, Hiroshi was involved in an experiment aimed at controlling kaiju, an endeavor that may have contributed to a major catastrophe. Exiting a damaged building from this failed attempt, Hiroshi encountered Manda, causing destruction. He tried to exert control over Manda, but was interrupted as King Ghidorah lifted him into the air. Manda, a serpent-like creature, is depicted as the guardian of the underwater kingdom Mu in the 1963 movie Atragon. His origins and the duration of his guardianship over Mu remains enigmatic. Manda's design is reminiscent of a traditional Eastern dragon, featuring a long, slender body with 4 legs. Manda is known for his ability to constrict, a tactic he uses to ensnare and crush adversaries or structures. Coming back, this was followed by Bathra, engaging King Ghidorah, which culminated in a clash of their energy beams. The resulting explosion caused debris to fall, fatally injuring a woman Hiroshi had rescued from the building. Snapping back to the present, Hiroshi observed Godzilla as he overpowered Mothra in their ongoing battle. He led Arata and Shiori away from the scene, distancing them from the other villagers. Hiroshi then disclosed to them that the actions humanity had taken against Godzilla are the same actions that fueled Godzilla's hostility. In an effort to curb the persistent monster attack, humanity developed weapons, yet these proved ineffective in keeping the monsters at bay permanently. Consequently, a desperate strategy was brought to life. Humans gathered individuals with psychic abilities to pacify the monsters. Initially, this approach seemed successful, but it ultimately aggravated the kaiju, intensifying their aggression. Upon learning of these events, Arata reacted with anger and stormed off, while Shiori showed more understanding. Meanwhile, Godzilla and Mothra's confrontation escalated, with Godzilla nearly severing Mothra's wings using his atomic breath. He then directed a potent spiral ray attack at the giant moth. As Hiroshi and Shiori pressed on, Hiroshi was overwhelmed by a mix of fear and guilt, haunted by the notion that his past actions had now summoned a catastrophic consequence. In this moment of dread, Destroya emerged from the water. Things were about to get very, very serious. Not even gods can stop this circle of life. Before we get into the final issue, let's briefly explore Destroya, a big bad villain of the story. Destroya ranks among the most formidable adversaries Godzilla has ever encountered. Intriguingly, Godzilla never truly vanquished Destroya. This creature is an amalgamation of trillions of microscopic organisms and possesses remarkable adaptability and regenerative capabilities. These organisms can coalesce into various forms of Destroya or disperse into smaller entities. All forms of Destroya wield the micro-oxygen ray as their primary weapon. Additionally, its colossal form features a secondary set of jaws capable of injecting micro-oxygen into its victims. In both its ultimate and aerial forms, Destroya is equipped with a tail claw robust enough to restrain Godzilla, drain energy, discharge electricity, and transform its horn into a potent blade. Destroya's strength, shown in its battle scenes, is exceptional. Even among the giant monsters, it stands at an impressive 120 meters tall and has a mass of 80,000 tons. It is 230 meters in length, and it boasts a wingspan of 210 meters, making it one of the largest and most powerful entities Godzilla has faced. So yeah, that's what Godzilla was up against in this story. Destroya emerged from the water and split into multiple smaller forms, pursuing the villagers as they fled into the forest. In the midst of this escape, Hiroshi and his grandchildren paused briefly, with Hiroshi urging them not to risk their lives for him. Arata, trying to reassure his grandfather, inspired Hiroshi to hope for Godzilla's intervention against Destroya, believing humanity could change its ways. However, their moment was cut short as a small Destroya caught up and impaled Hiroshi. After releasing him, the creature retreated when Godzilla appeared, ready to confront Destroya. The smaller Destroyas merged into a larger flying form to battle Godzilla. Amidst this chaos, Hiroshi, gravely injured, instructed his grandchildren to transport Biollante away from the conflict, emphasizing the urgency of removing the plant creature from the vicinity. As Godzilla struggled against Destroya, Mothra intervened, shifting the dynamics of the battle. Destroya, transforming into its final form, unleashed a micro-oxygen beam, fatally striking Mothra. Seizing this moment, Godzilla targeted Destroya with his atomic breath, forcing it to the ground. In an unexpected turn, Biolante's vines emerged, entangling and immobilizing Destroya. Godzilla capitalized on this advantage and executed a point-blank spiral heat ray, effectively terminating Destroya. You see, the only way to annihilate Destroya is through killing him when he is in his final form. Post-conflict, Godzilla surveyed the remnants of Tokyo, now beginning to flourish with greenery from Biolante's roots, before retreating into the ocean. In the aftermath, amidst the devastated cityscape, a single rose blossomed, symbolizing the gradual return of nature. Meanwhile, in a separate location, 2 Mothra larvae emerged from their eggs, so the cycle of life was continuing. Marvelous verdict. Cullen Bunn really shakes things up with Godzilla, steering clear of the usual tropes. He shows Godzilla as more than just a monster. He's a force that's changed people's lives big time. Godzilla's past rampages aren't front and center anymore, and now they're just a faint blip in Hiroshi's memory. Bunn dives into myths and legends through the eyes of a family, each seeing the world in their own way. Then there's Dave Walker's art. It's a feast for the eyes. He brings us these incredible scenes with jets zooming around, launching missiles in a sea of flames and smoke with Godzilla right in the thick of it. The whole comic pops with these intense reds, except when Godzilla's breathing fire. That's when the colors really switch up. Wachter has nailed it with the monster designs too. Each one's got its own look and way of causing chaos. It's a cool mix of the Godzilla monsters we all love and some fresh new faces. Marvel's Videos is going all guns blazing into the Monsterverse, exploring everything there is to explore from the past to the present and the future. You'll find deep dives and other videos on the latest Monsterverse TV series, the upcoming movie, and much more. So if you're a Gojira or Kong fan, I suggest you stick around with us.
If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.